Before anyone said my name, I was already standing in the doorway with my coat still on, and my fingers gone cold, around a blue folder. Not the copy kind. Originals. The good paper with raised seals that catch the light. Daniel and Marcus stood, in front of the chair I was meant to sit in, like bouncers at a nightclub I'd never go to. "You're not on the list," Daniel said, not meeting my eyes. "It's immediate family only," Marcus added, as if I didn't know what those words meant after carrying both of them and paying for the braces and the field trips and the broken windshields. The room smelled like coffee that had sat out too long, the kind that turns bitter. The curtains were thick and heavy, and there was a little stain on the carpet near the credenza. I noticed the stain because I notice small things when my nerves go tight. I stood there holding the folder, like a shield I hadn't planned to use. I had imagined this morning with some dignity. I thought they would read my cousin's will, and we would nod and say, "Yes, that sounds right." And then we would go home, and I would sit at my kitchen table and cry in private for Clara. "I received a letter," I said, quiet but steady, "from Winslow and Chambers. It had this address and today's date. The receptionist with the neat bun, her tag said Mendez, and she couldn't have been more than 30, looked embarrassed for me. "Ma'am," she started, "we have the list right here." She held up a piece of paper like that was the end of the story. Daniel folded his arms and moved a half step to the side, the way he does when he wants to take up more air in the room. He wore that cologne that smells like pepper. Marcus checked his watch. He always checks his watch when he wants something to be over. I took one breath. Then I stepped forward, past the boys, and set my blue folder on the corner of the secretary's desk. "Please give this to Mr. Harold," I said. "Tell him I think it supersedes any amendments made last fall." She wasn't sure what to do. I don't blame her. It isn't easy to tell a woman with gray hair to turn around and go home when her hands are shaking just enough to make the papers click against each other. I sat in the chair they'd blocked. Neither of my sons stopped me. No one said my name. You'd be surprised how loud silence can be in a room with carpet and wood paneling. It sits in your chest. The door at the end opened. Mr. Harold came in. Tall, gray beard, suit that always looks like it's brushed with library dust. He had my paper in his hand. He read as he walked. "Mrs. Ellison," he said, nodding to me. "May I speak with you a moment?" Daniel started to protest. Mr. Harold did not even blink. I followed him down a short hall to an office that smelled like cedar and old books. He spread the paper on the counter. "This is unexpected," he said, touching the seal with one finger. "You and Ms. Clara Ashton executed a mutual will in 2007, notarized, witnessed, filed with the county. It predates the revised documents I received from your sons last month." He looked at me, kind but precise. "Legally, this stands unless it was revoked in your presence." "It was not," I said. "Clara and I signed together." I could see the day plain as anything. The county office, her silly red scarf even though it was too warm for scarves, the way she held onto my elbow for nothing more than habit. He nodded slowly. "Then unless the court finds some extraordinary reason to overturn, you are the sole beneficiary of Miss Ashton's estate." He paused like good doctors do before they give news that will change a room. "Do you want me to inform them?" "No," I said. "Let them hear it with everyone else." I didn't say it to be cruel. I said it because I had been quiet for a long time, and I wanted to hear my cousin's name said the way she meant for it to be said. When we walked back in, Daniel had his jaw set. Marcus had that little twitch in his cheek he gets when he's near a sale, and worried it won't close. I sat. Mr. Harold sat. He cleared his throat and opened the leather binder. My boys didn't look at me, but I could feel them thinking. "You can feel that with your children. It's like a weather change," he began. "We're here to read the last will and testament of Ms. Clara Elise Ashton." The phone on the receptionist's desk rang and stopped. Someone coughed. Mr. Harold read every line in that steady voice. He did not rush. He reached the clause that named me. The room shifted, the way a house shifts in a storm. He finished. No one clapped. No one gasped. Daniel stared at the wall. Marcus stared at his hands. Not boys anymore. Men in suits who didn't come when I called them to dinner, and now didn't come when I called them to decency. I won't pretend I felt triumphant. I didn't. I felt tired in that deep way you feel after a long drive when you finally turn into your own street, and you know every crack in the pavement. I thanked Mr. Harold, shook his hand, and left the office without looking at the stain on the carpet. At home, the house was quiet. Not the good kind of quiet where you can hear the clock and the refrigerator hum like a lullaby. The other kind. The kind where you know the phone is going to ring, and you don't know which voice you'll hear first, the angry one or the fake sweet one. I boiled water I didn't drink. Habit. I stood at the sink and looked at the yard. The dogwood Clara and I planted in '95 was beginning to bloom again, pink like a blush. She called it her fancy tree because it made the whole yard look like we had planned something. Clara was my cousin, but that word doesn't cover it. We were close as sisters, closer in some ways because we had places inside our heads the other one understood without explanation. She was 11 months older. Our mothers called us Irish twins when they were being cute, and said it with a sigh when we borrowed each other's things. She wore perfume, even when she was just going to the corner store. She kept a lipstick by the back door and put it on like armor. I was the quiet one. I liked lists and receipts and putting money in envelopes. She liked stories and train stations and buying cherries out of season just to see how they tasted. When she got forgetful, it started small. Keys in the freezer, names slipping, the kettle left whistling longer than it should. Then the bigger things. The stove left on. The car parked crooked across 2 spaces. The day she called me from a mile away and said she was on Maple Street, when she was sitting on our own front steps, I knew we were at the edge of something hard. I turned the guest room into her room. Not a hospital room. Her room. Quilt from her apartment. The painting of the little boat she bought at that art fair in Cedar Springs. The lamp with the chipped blue shade she never threw away. I won't list everything I did for her. I don't need to prove that part. If you've cared for someone, you know the rhythm. Mornings that start earlier than you want. The debate over oatmeal or eggs. When she doesn't really want either. The soft voice you learn to use even when you are late. The medication tray with days of the week snapping open and shut like little mouths. The laundry basket that never empties. The walks that take the long way because she likes the maple tree on the next street, even if she forgets. Why, when you get there, some days she was herself, sharp and funny. She'd tell me to fix my hair and ask if I remembered the time she convinced me to dye mine red for a wedding, and we both looked like we'd fallen into a jar of paprika. Some days she wasn't herself. Those days we sat and watched the birds, and I held her hand, and we didn't name it anything. We just let it be what it was. Daniel and Marcus did not come much. When they did, they stood in the doorway and shuffled and told me I was doing God's work, like it was a thing you say instead of a thing you help with. I don't say that to shame them. I say it because it's true, and because truth is easier to hold than pretending. They were busy, always busy. Daniel with his deals, Marcus with his garage. I texted pictures of Clara wearing her old garden hat They sent thumbs-up emojis. When I asked Marcus to pick up a prescription once, he told me he was swamped. I said all right. Then I put my shoes on and went out myself. Clara asked me to do our wills together years ago, when she was still herself. People change their minds when there's money on the table, she said, stirring her tea. Let's not give them the chance. I'm not the type to race anyone to a pen, but it made sense. We went to the county. We sat at the long table and signed side by side, while the woman at the desk watched us with the face you make when you want to be anywhere else. Clara squeezed my hand under the table. Done, she whispered, like we'd gotten away with something. We put the papers in my fireproof box. We went for pie after. Lemon meringue because it was too sweet and because she liked to scrape the toasted top with her spoon, like a child. After her mind started to unravel, she still had clear stretches. We'd sit on the porch, and she'd point at the dogwood and say, "When I'm gone, don't let the boys turn this into a parking place." I promised. She'd close her eyes and say, "You'll know what to do, May." The last week, she didn't speak words. She hummed sometimes, just that low sound people make when they are trying to follow something you can't hear. The day before she died, she squeezed my hand twice. Once for hello, once for goodbye. I knew what she meant. You do, when you've sat with someone that long. So when the letter came with the law firm's crest, and my name printed clean across the front, I didn't tell Daniel and Marcus. I didn't hide it. I just put it on the counter and made my lunch and opened it after I washed the dishes. I didn't speak it out loud because I've learned that saying certain things out loud brings in sound you might not want. After the reading, the messages came. First, Marcus. "Hey, Mom, just checking in? Maybe we should all sit down and clear the air." Then Daniel with the smooth voice he uses when he's trying to get a better rate. "Mother, there seems to have been a clerical error. We'll need copies of anything you brought today for transparency." Transparency. I pressed delete on the machine as easy as tapping a crumb off the counter. I wrote 2 letters, 1 sentence each. Please direct any questions to Mr. Harold. No apology. No extra words. I kept my voice in my pocket for something that deserved it. The next morning, the doorbell rang at 9. Daniel. Suit again, even on a Saturday. He had a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I was in the area," he said. "At 9? I asked. He laughed like we were in on the same joke. He looked around my living room like a realtor. He sat on the arm of the chair instead of in it. He always does that when he wants to leave fast if things don't go his way. "I think there's been some confusion," he started. "We were told." "You were told what you wanted to hear?" I said. My voice didn't shake. "You didn't? Ask me. You didn't ask Clara. You asked each other and decided that was enough. Mom, we're family." He said it like a reminder and a warning. "We can work this out." "I've already worked it out," I said. "Years ago, with Clara, in a public office with a pen that kept skipping. You weren't there?" He blinked. It's funny, the things that unnerve a person who's used to winning. Not yelling, not threats, just facts said plain. "Are you really going to cut us out?" he asked softer. He meant me. Daniel rarely says us unless he wants you to hear me twice. "I'm going to stop paying for your bad manners," I said. "I'm going to stop rewarding empty chairs." He pressed his lips together. He looked at the dogwood out front, the petals blowing across the steps. "So that's it?" he said. "That's it," I said, and opened the door. He stood and adjusted his jacket out of habit. He didn't slam anything. He walked to his car and drove off with the same care he uses, pulling away from a client's house. People practice the small exits, so no one notices the big ones. Marcus came 2 days later. He took his boots off without me asking. He sat at the kitchen table where the sunlight hits in late morning. He put an envelope on the table and slid it toward me like a peace offering. Inside was a list of every dollar I'd loaned him in the last 15 years. The amounts were right down to the 50 I'd handed him at the gas station one winter when his truck died, and he was too proud to ask. "I can't pay it all at once," he said, "but I want you to know I kept track." He wasn't crying. He wasn't performing. He looked tired. "I'm not joining a fight," he said. Daniel asked. I told him no. "Good," I said. I didn't make a speech. He nodded. Before he left, he fixed the wobbly hinge on the pantry door. He didn't ask for a screwdriver. He found the one I keep in the basket with the envelopes. Then he put it back without saying, "There, I did something," which I appreciated more than the fix. The letter from a downtown firm showed up later that week, with gold trim, and the language that sounds polite until you read it twice. Unfortunate discrepancy. Amicable resolution. Reserves all rights. Lawyers know how to use words like fence posts. I took it to Mr. Harold. He read it and pushed his glasses up. "Posturing," he said. "We'll answer. It won't stand." We did. It didn't. But the process takes time, and time has its own teeth. If you're listening, stay with me here because this is the part people always think is quick and clean, like TV. It is not. It is the waiting, and the not sleeping, and the waking at 3 a.m, because a crow tapped the window, and now you're imagining futures you don't need to live. It's the way grief and anger take turns in your chest, like old friends, who don't like each other but keep showing up on the same day. It's the way you fold towels slower, the way you wash the same mug twice. It's the way you stand in the cereal aisle and forget what you came for, because someone who once called you Mommy sent a letter through a man you've never met that said you were the problem. I made a list and a plan because that's how I keep the room from spinning. I called the bank and put protections on accounts I never expected to have. The young woman at the desk, Dana, called me Mrs. Ellison, like it mattered to get the name right. She explained every paper without talking down to me. I signed, in blue ink because I like to see the color. I asked for alerts and copies and for them to put my phone number first. "Of course," she said, and meant it. I spoke with Mr. Harold about a trust for someone who'd been here when my house was loud for the right reasons. Not my son's. My cousin's granddaughter, Claire. She is 26, works nights at the library, and knocks softly, like she isn't sure the knock is welcome, even though I've told her 1,000 times to come right in. She brought lemon bars 2 days after Clara died, and didn't try to make me talk. She sat and crocheted and told me that one of the teenagers at the library had returned a book with a note left inside that said, "This helped." That's the kind of story that keeps a person breathing. I didn't choose Claire because she's perfect. She's not. She's still figuring herself out. But she comes. She stays. She washes the extra mug without asking. She says, "Do you want me to take the trash out?" And then she takes it out whether I say yes or no. I told Mr. Harold what I wanted. He wrote it up. "You're sure?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm sure." It's a new feeling at 78 to say you are sure and not look around for permission. The courthouse notice arrived with the seal and the date. Daniel had filed to contest. Undue influence. Diminished capacity. There she was on paper. My Clara. turned into a set of words that did not fit the woman who made lists on napkins and corrected my grocery math even when she was tired. I sat at my table and opened Clara's journals. Not all of them. Just the ones from the years when the forgetting was present, but she still had her voice. She wrote about the dogwood, needing pruning. She wrote about the boy at the corner store who called her Miss C and carried her milk to the car without charging a tip. She wrote about our will. "We did the right thing today," she wrote. "May won't say it out loud because she hates being the center, but she knows." I copied those pages. I sent them to Mr. Harold with a note. If they want proof of her mind, let them have her sentences. Claire came on a Tuesday right before rain. She brought a tin of lemon bars and that sheepish smile that makes you forgive her for arriving 5 minutes late. "Have they called?" she asked, not saying who. "Yes," I said, "not to me. To the courthouse." She breathed out through her nose the way Clara used to, when something wasn't fair and couldn't be fixed in the time it would take to complain about it. We ate lemon bars at the counter, and I told her a story about Clara getting us thrown out of a movie theater in '69 for laughing too loud at the wrong moment. Claire laughed with her eyes closed. I needed that sound. That night the phone rang late. "Mom," Marcus said. "He filed. He says if I don't side with him, I'm against the family." That word again. Family like a leash. "Do what keeps your head on your pillow," I said. "Don't stand in front of a train because your brother told you he bought the track. He was quiet a long time." "I'm tired," he said. "I know," I said. "Rest anyway." The day of the hearing, the sky was the kind of clear that almost feels rude. I sat with Mr. Harold at the small table. He laid everything out in neat stacks. He talks little, which I appreciate. We said what had to be said. The judge was a woman with a look that said she'd heard every version of every story and wasn't impressed by any of them. She read our papers. She asked Daniel 2 questions. He tried to answer like a salesman who missed the first line of the script. She raised her hand and he stopped talking. "I see no cause to contest," she said. "Motion denied." She tapped the gavel once. It sounded smaller than you expect for a thing that can end an argument. Daniel walked out without looking. "Back!" Mr. Harold shook my hand. "I told you," he said. I nodded. I didn't smile until I turned the corner out of the courthouse and saw the hot dog cart that's always there at noon. The same man who calls everyone boss, even if you are a woman with gray hair. "Boss," he said. "Ketchup today." "Yes," I said, and ate a hot dog on the steps like a person with nothing urgent left to sign. I went home and put the kettle on. I wrote 2 more letters. One to Daniel. "I wish you well. I won't be available to discuss this further." One to Marcus. "I saw your list. Thank you for keeping track. Do what's right by yourself. If you need help that isn't money, ask." I put stamps on both before my nerve could wander. Here is where I tell you it would have been neater if they had apologized. It would have soothed something in me to hear a clean sentence. But neat isn't the same as honest. Daniel sent one more email with the subject line, "Misunderstanding." I didn't open it. Marcus came by and stood on the steps with a sack of oranges and didn't say much. He fixed a loose board on the porch swing. We stood for a while and watched a squirrel strip bark from the maple. Then he said he had to get back to the shop. I said I had bread in the oven even though I didn't. If you're still listening, don't go yet. This is the part people skip. The part after the papers. The part where you're supposed to feel relieved and instead you feel hollow for a week. And then angry again because your body is used to the fight and misses it like a bad habit. I kept moving. I read the obituaries every morning because I always have. I watered the plants. I took a bag of sweaters to the church basement and told the woman at the table to keep the coat hangers because I always have too many. One afternoon, I stood at the sink and noticed the light hitting the dogwood just right, the pink looking like someone had put a lamp inside each flower. I wished Clara could see it. Then I laughed because of course she couldn't, and wishing doesn't change a thing, but it's stubborn, the wish muscle. Later I took a notebook from the drawer and wrote a letter for after I'm gone. Not to scold, to explain. To Claire, mostly. I told her what was hers and why. I told her she reminded me of the part of myself that still likes to try new recipes, even when the first batch burns. I told her she doesn't owe anyone her silence. It took me 78 years to learn that out loud. A week later, Daniel came by in a windbreaker instead of a suit. He stood on the porch and didn't ask to come in. That was new. "I'm here to try one more time," he said. "Not sorry." "I'm not here to be convinced," I said. "I know," he said, looking past me at the living room like it held a clue to a test he hadn't studied for. "I was scared," he said finally. "After Dad, and then with Aunt Clara, I thought if I didn't take control, everything would fall apart. You don't have to control something to care about it," I said. "Sometimes you just have to show up and put the kettle on." He pressed his tongue to his teeth the way he does when he doesn't like what he's hearing. "So, what now?" he asked. "Now," I said. "You go live your life. I'll live mine. Maybe one day you come over and you sit down and you ask me how my day was without asking me for anything after. And maybe I'll ask about yours. And we won't use the word family like a tool. We'll use it like a noun." He nodded. He left. He didn't turn around. Spring settled. Claire started a community read at the library. She asked if I would stand up and say a few words about why I still keep a library card in the same little plastic sleeve I've had since 1971. I said yes and told a room of strangers that libraries have saved me more times than I can count. When I was 20 and lonely, when I was 43 and angry, when I was 70 and grieving. After, a woman my age squeezed my hand and said, "Me too." And that was enough. I planted herbs in pots on the porch, the cheap kind from the grocery store that you have to coax. Basil, which I always kill, and thyme, which grows no matter what you do to it. I bought 2 tomato starts because Clara liked to eat them warm from the sun with too much salt. I put a little plastic chair by the front steps because sometimes I need to sit down halfway between the garden hose and the mailbox, and I decided I didn't have to pretend I didn't. Paperwork finished. Deeds transferred. The bank folders, organized with sticky notes because if I go tomorrow, I want someone to open a drawer and find cents. I called Mr. Harold one last time. "Is there anything else you need from me?" I asked. "No, Mrs. Ellison," he said. "You did everything you were supposed to, and some things you weren't, just to make sure others were okay. He's not a sentimental man. That's why the sentence mattered." On the anniversary of Clara's passing, I made her lemon meringue. It wept a little, the way meringue does when the kitchen is humid and you rush it. I stood by the sink and ate a slice, off a paper plate. I took the rest over to the librarian's and left it in the staff room with a note that said, "For the people who keep the lights on." On the way home, I drove past the county building where she and I signed those papers. For once, I didn't feel any tightness in my chest, just a steady kind of gratitude that we were 2 women who did something hard before it was urgent. Marcus still calls on Sundays. Sometimes he tells me about an engine that fought him and then gave in. Sometimes he just says, "You good." And I say, I'm here. And that counts. Daniel sent a card at Christmas. No return address. His handwriting looked like it did when he was 9 and wanted a skateboard. He wrote, "Hope you're well." I stuck it on the fridge with a magnet and then moved it to a drawer in February because I didn't want to look at it daily and think about the wrong parts. This is what I know at 78. People will tell you to forgive quickly, like it's a chore you can check off. That isn't how it works when the wound is made of years. Forgiveness is not a single act. It's a way you start holding the door for your own self. It's refusing to sit in a chair you don't fit in anymore, just because somebody else thinks the picture looks nicer that way. It's choosing to remember every good thing without letting those good things be used to cover the harm. Forgave my boys for what they are. Men who grew up and got scared and made bad choices loud. I did not forgive the choices. That's different. I can love them from my porch with my cup of tea and still not hand them the keys. There is room in that sentence for both of us. Clara's house is mine now. I don't say that like a trophy. I say it like responsibility. I kept the dogwood. I fixed the porch rail. I let the neighbor's kids sell lemonade at the corner in the summer. And I always buy a cup even though it tastes like tap water and sugar because it isn't about the taste. It's about the way one of the boys waves at me when he sees me at the mailbox and yells, "Hi, Miss May," like I'm his favorite regular. I turned Clara's old room into a little studio with a table by the window. Some days I sort photographs and write names on the back so no one has to guess later. Some days I sit and listen to the noon train and pretend she's on it, coming home with a box of peaches she bought too early in the season. If you've lived long enough, you know there's a sound your life makes when it settles back into itself after a tear. It isn't a snap, it's a click, quiet, satisfying, like a lid finally fitting right. I hear it now when I lock the back door at night. I hear it when Claire leaves and says, "Tuesday," and I say, "Yes, Tuesday," and we both mean it. I hear it in the kitchen when the kettle starts to sing and I don't rush to shut it off. I let it whistle once for me and once for Clara. I am not the villain in my son's story, and I am not the victim either. I am a woman who kept records and promises and a cousin's hand. I am a woman who learned late how to keep space for herself at her own table. If you are where I was, standing in a doorway with a folder and 2 people, you love blocking a chair. Hear me. Take the step. Put the page down on the desk. Say your sentence plain. You don't have to be mean. You do have to be clear. When I think about starting over at my age, I don't picture a new town or a new husband or a new self. I picture this same house with fewer apologies in it. I picture the dogwood blooming because we remembered to prune it, not because we wished hard. I picture Sunday afternoons where the biggest decision is lemon or ginger tea. I picture Daniel walking up these steps one day with nothing in his hands and sitting down without talking at me like a client, and I picture both of us just letting the quiet be quiet until we are ready to speak like people. I don't know if that day will come. It doesn't have to for my life to be whole. It is already whole in the ways that count. A key that turns, a porch light that works, a cousin's name said out loud in the right room at the right time by the right person, while 2 men in suits learned something they should have learned earlier. It will do. If you're still with me, thank you. It helps to say it plain. It helps to tell the truth with both hands open. I'm going to put the kettle on now. The light's good in the kitchen this time of evening. The dogwood is pink like a promise that doesn't ask anything in return. I will sit where I can see it. I will take my tea without sugar, and I will make a second cup for Clara out of habit. That's not sadness. That's love that knows where to sit. And tomorrow, if the phone rings, I will answer it if I want to. If it doesn't, I'll open the window and listen to the train and think about lemon pie and the way paper feels when the seal is raised and your name is spelled right. I will think about how betrayal doesn't get the last word if you don't let it. I will think about forgiveness like a door. You oil a little each week so it'll open easy when you finally want to walk through. And I will be all right. I already am.